Here is lesson 2 of um, chapter 4, and here we're talking about throwing a ball straight up in there. So this diagram is not the trace of the ball. So this is not the trace of the ball. This is the height of the ball is your y-axis, and your x-axis is the time that it takes because you're just throwing the ball straight up. And we want to find out what is the total distance the ball travels. So we start throwing the ball at time 0. Start throwing the ball at time 0 at 4 feet, and then we throw the ball up. We would throw it straight up, and it goes up until this height, right? And it reaches that height at 1 second. So that would be how long the ball takes to travel up, would be 1 second. And then how the total distance, well, it goes from 4 all the way up to 14. And then it comes down from 14 back to 4. So it travels a distance of 10, and then comes back a distance of 10. So it travels a distance of 20, and then it takes 1 second to travel up. And so why we're looking at this, because we're continuing on our theme of quadratics. We're talking about graphing quadratics from the first lesson. Here is just a different way to graph it. Last time we were just plugging in x's. We plugged in our x here and plugged in our x here and solved for our y and then plotted those points. Well, here, last time we didn't have this bx. This was gone, so we just had an ax squared or an ax squared plus c. Well, now we have that b part in there, and that's going to change things a little bit. So finding our vertex before, it was just 0, 0. But here, now to find our vertex, we have to find the x-coordinate of our vertex first, which is taking our negative b and dividing that by 2 times a. And that will give ours our x value. And then once we have that x value, what x equals negative b over 2a. This whole thing is the line that divides our parabola in half. We talked about the parabola last time. So it divides that parabola right in half because it's symmetric. Now, once we have that x value, then we plug it in for x here and here, and we find our y, and then we would know what our vertex is of our parabola. Then all we have to do is just substitute x in 0 for x. And when we do that, we get 0 here and 0 here, and both of these would be 0. And so all we'd get is y equals c, and that would be our y-intercept. 0, c, 0, c would be our y-intercept. So then we would have our vertex, which is negative b over 2a, and then we plug in, that's what it means by writing this, we plug in negative b over 2a into our x, here and here, and we find our y. So there would be our vertex, we'd graph that point, and then we'd graph this point, and then we'd fold it over our axis of symmetry to get our third point. So let's do some examples on that. So here's an example, here's our function, y equals x squared minus 6x plus 4. So we're going to take our negative, so I would recommend is find your a. How many x squareds do you have? You have 1x squared. Find your b. How many plain x's? Your linear term. Make sure if there's a negative in front, you take that with it, so negative 6. And then c is our constant, the one without a variable, equals 4. And then we're going to do negative b. So that'd be opposite of b. So opposite of negative 6 is a positive 6. Then we're going to do 2 times a. So 2 times 1 is 2. And then we're going to take negative b over 2a. So I have my negative b, that's 6. I have my 2 times a, that's 2. So 6 over 2 is 3. So our axis of symmetry, is x equals 3. So that's the line that's going to divide our parabola right in half. And now I have my x value. So now I take that x value, and I plug it into my equation for my x here and here. So I take that x, 3, I plug it in here. Whenever you plug something in, you should put that in parentheses. And then everything else stays the same. This is being squared. Then I subtract 6 times my x, and then I add 4, and that will give me my y. First we square it. 3 squared is 9. After all the squareds are done, then we go ahead and multiply. So here we have multiplication, negative 6 times 3, that's negative 18. Then we go ahead and add and subtract. 9 minus 18 is a negative 9. And 9 plus 4 is a negative 5. So there's our y value. Here's our x value, negative 3. So our vertex is 3, negative 5. So then we can graph that. I go over 3, 1, 2, 3, down 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I put my point, right? I had to use both those numbers to get my point. The first number is x, that goes left and right. And the second number is y, that goes up and down. Now I plug in 0 into my equation. And remember, it's always 0 comma c. So what was your c? Well, our c was 4. So 0 comma 4. So I go up 0, move over 0, and then go up 4. Put my point. So I know half my parabola goes like this, right? So how do I get the other side? Well, I take my axis of symmetry, x equals 3, so that's the vertical line going through 3. And then I just fold my graph over to the other side. So how far is this point from this line? It's 1, 2, 3. So then I go over 3 on the other side. 1, 2, 3. And I put that point. And then I can finish my parabola, my U-shaped graph. So that's how you graph it. So here's another one. You can pause the video. You can try this yourself. Okay, and I'm about to start. So if you haven't finished, go ahead and pause. At least find your a, b, and c first. Okay, so my a is negative 1, my b is 4, and my c is negative 2. Okay, so now that you have those, now go ahead and try to find your 2 times a, your negative b. Find out what that is. Go ahead and pause the video, try that. Okay, so 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. Opposite of b is opposite of 4, which is negative 4. Okay, once you got that, go ahead and now try to find your negative b divided by 2a. Okay, pause the video, find that. So my negative b was negative 4. My 2a was negative 2. So negative divided by negative is a positive, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So negative b over 2a is equal to positive 2. So x equals positive 2. All right, because that's what x equals. X equals negative b over 2a is your axis of symmetry. Okay, now what do we do with that? How do I find a y value? How could I use this x value equals 2 and find my y value, my vertex? So I know my vertex is 2 for my x. How do I find my y value? Okay, go ahead and pause the video. Think about that. All right, the answer is you got to plug the x in here and the x in here, and you will find your y value. So I have y equals a negative x squared plus 4 times my x minus 2. So plug in that x value 2, put it in parentheses, leave everything else the same. So negative in front, squared, a plus 4, and a minus 2, and that will give you your y. First things first, we need to take 2, a positive 2, and square it. Okay, then go ahead and pause the video. You can run through and find your y. So my y is going to be 2 times 2 is 4. Then the negatives out front. Okay, now if you didn't get this far, go ahead and write this down and now pause the video and try to finish it. Okay, now I do multiplication. So I get 8. 4 times 2 is 8. Okay, once you get this far, go ahead and pause it, try it again, try to finish it. Negative 4 plus 8 is a positive 4. Minus 2, 4 minus 2 is 2, so there's your y value. So you get that 0.22, so you can graph that. Go ahead and graph it. Pause the video if you need to. Alright, so I'm going to go right 2, and then up 2, and then put my point. So there's my vertex, 2, comma 2. Now I plug in 0, and it's always going to be my c. So what's your c? Pause the video. Okay, it's negative 2. So we go down 2, put our point. Go ahead and draw half of your graph. Pause the video. Okay, so there's half of it. Now, what am I going to use in order to fold that over on the other side? Pause the video, go ahead and graph it, and then pause the video. Alright, I'm going to use the axis symmetry, x equals 2, so it's a vertical line through that x value of 2. So I'm going to count how far over this point is from that line. 1, 2, and then I'm going to go on the other side. 1, 2, put my point, and then finish your graph. So that's how you graph these. So here's a word problem basically. Last time we talked about this. The height is given by negative 16 t squared plus c, where negative 16 has to deal with your your force due to gravity in feet per second. But here, since now we have a b, right, so then we have this vt in the middle. Before c just represents the height of dropping of object, at the height, what height it was. And t stands for time and h stands for height. Well, now, since it's more complicated a little bit, right, we have that b. So here we're actually shooting a projectile in the air, and we have this initial velocity of v, okay? And c stands for the initial height. Okay, so here we have this problem. We're going to use this formula to find the height. So we're asked to, we have an upward initial velocity of 72, so that means v equals 72. And the t-shirt is 35 feet above the court, so there's our c, so c equals 35. Okay, so now we have our equation. We can go ahead and write it. H is equal to negative 16t squared, so t is kind of like our x, plus our initial velocity 72 times t, and then plus our initial height 35. So now we have this equation. Now we can find how long it will take the t-shirt to reach its max height. Well, max height, isn't that our vertex? Isn't that what we just got done doing? Our x equals negative b over 2a, and then plugging that into our equation. So go ahead and try that. So you can label your a, your b, your c, label your 2 times a, label your negative b, and then find your negative b over 2a. So that's what your x is going to equal. Okay, so pause the video, go ahead and try that. Alright, so my a is negative 16, my b is 72, my c is 35. 2a would be negative 32, opposite of b would be negative 72. And so then we take our negative b, which is negative 32, and I divide that by 2 times a, which is, that's my 2a, and my negative b is negative 72. Okay, so we can reduce those both by 2, so x equals 36 over 18, because a negative over negative is positive. I can divide those by 2, so I get 18 over 9, then I can divide those by 3, so we get 6 over 3. Easy. Divide those by 2, that would be 36, and not 18, sorry, 16. I can divide those by 2, and I get 18 over 8. I can divide those by 2, and I get 9 over 4, and so 9/4. So here we have fractions, that's okay, so x equals 9/4. And then we're going to plug that into our equation to find our y, right? Because y equals negative 16, well, h, but that's okay. T squared plus 72t plus 35. So we're going to enter the t in here and here. So I put x equals, but really it's t. So we might not have to. Let's figure out what it's asked. How long will it take to reach its max height? Boom, right there. T equals 9/4. So it'll take 9/4 of a minute. Are we talking about minutes? Seconds? Probably seconds. Yeah, seconds. So it will take 9/4 of seconds to reach its max height. Okay. Now, what is the max height? So we are going to have to plug it in, right? We're going to have to find this. Oops. We're going to have to find this h or y. Okay, so we're going to have to plug in 9/4. And if you want to change that to a decimal, that's fine too, because we're looking at a real life problem, even though you're probably never going to do this problem in real life. But We can do it, so you could use a decimal if you wanted to. Oops, negative 16 equals our height. Okay, so first we got a square, so 9 times 9 is 81, 4 times 4 is 16. Okay, anytime you can pause this video and then come back. 16 over 16, multiplying, those cancel, so I get negative 81. 72 divided by 4, so they're both even, so it'd be 36 over 2, and 36 over 2 is 18, so 18 times 9 plus 35, so I'm going to have to get a calculator for that, because I don't know that off the top of my head, but that's okay. Okay, so that's 162 plus a negative 81, well that's half, right, so that's equal to positive 81, and then we add in 35, so 81 plus 35, so that's 116, so our height is equal to 116. So that's our max height, and then what is the range of the function? Where does it go from? What's the range of the function that models the height of the t-shirt over time? So the range of the function, so how range is talking about the y value, so what's the lowest y value, which is 35, and then the highest would be 116. Okay, so here's a similar problem. This time your initial velocity is 64, your height again is 35, so you can write your equation. So this time it's just 64 right here, t plus 35, and then you're answering the same questions we just did, so you can go ahead and do that by yourself.